Hello, MouseHunt, and welcome to Feedback Friday. Hello, everybody in the chat. My name's Dave. Today is, what day is it? It is January 7, 2022. That makes it the first Feedback Friday of the new year. Hello, everybody. Had a few early birds in the chat. Hello there. Brian, wishing everybody a Happy New Year. Well, Happy New Year to you as well. Traco, Jonathan, Diamond, Chrome, yeah, Free Schmidt, hello. You're some early birds popping in before the stream even started. Roxanne, hello, good morning to you as well. Admiring some tire artwork. That was the loading splash, and indeed the costume tiger mouse is going to get an update this year, as it was one of the older costumed mice. It was illustrated long ago. LV, hey devs, love the event. Little unhappy with how quickly it ended. You're an active player, but the holiday period is naturally busy, so got nowhere near the rewards. Well, I mean, that's good feedback to keep in mind for next year. I don't know if we could run it any longer, but we could maybe lower the cost of a few things potentially, but it already is one of the longer events. Maybe only second to the spring egg hunt upcoming. That's typically 4 weeks long, whole month long event. Ice Killer, Free Schmidt, Wendy, good morning to you as well. Hello, hello, KDM, hello, good morning. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you happen to be in the world. Free Schmidt says, welcome to 2022. We'll see how long I can keep tabs on what year it is exactly. So Brian, yeah, and I'm in right in there with hello Dave. Managed to get the date right in the title today. Great start to 2022. Hey, I'll take it. I'm notoriously bad with calendars. I struggle to remember what day of the week it is sometimes. But hello everybody. Today I thought we'd give a little bit of info on the upcoming Lunar New Year event, as well as an update on another project that has been on the go for quite some time, working on overhauling the shops. And so that's a big work in progress, a lot of auditing to do. It's definitely a little involved, I guess. I was struggling to find a great word for it, but there's a lot of details to go through there for sure. So we'll start off with Lunar New Year, and perhaps most pertinent piece of information is that it is scheduled to start on Monday, January 31. So that will kick off. It is the Lunar Lantern event that many hunters would be familiar with from years past, where you can double or triple your loot drops with just a few small exemptions here and there. But this year, probably the biggest change being you can now immediately claim the Lunar Lantern, which means you no longer need to capture one of each Zodiac mouse. And that's just kind of feedback we've gotten over the years that it's not particularly fun or interesting. The fun part is going in and raising the lantern, actually playing the event. Just kind of feels like a time gate, more frustrating than fun. And yeah, it's felt great so far during playtesting, kind of removing that part of it, going through it. But the only thing that stood out to us, and was interested to get player feedback and overall sentiments there, was we typically do an adventure for this event. And without the need to capture one of each Zodiac mouse, the adventure is greatly simplified. And even when we think about, okay, well, what purpose does an adventure serve? It's often to help sort of explain how to go through something, whereas there isn't as much to the Lunar New Year event. There isn't as much that needs explanation. But in some ways, when it comes to an event, another half of the adventure is like, I was there. A little kind of, you can scroll back through the years and remember all the events that you took part in. And so, I don't know, we're looking for sentiment from players. Should we keep, even if it's a very simplified adventure, should we still have that there? Should we forego an adventure if it's that simple? Do players put a lot of value in kind of the nostalgic adventure book of the event tab, being able to scroll back and see all the events that they took part in? Ryan says that's a first, starting on a Monday every now and then. Usually not too often do we start on a Monday, but it does happen. Friday we try to stay clear of, unless it's something specifically weekend themed. The costume chain was really slow, says Ice Killer. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't particularly fun or interesting, right? And so that's usually a pretty good signal that needs to be reworked. And yeah, it just felt better simplified. And you can now dive right in as soon as you load up the game while the event is running. There's that familiar section on the camp, and you can claim your lantern right away. Sally says definitely keep it. LV likes a simplified adventure. Leave it be, says Snowy, as some kind of entry in the adventure book, eh? Yeah, that's what we were wondering, if a lot of players sort of like to scroll back through it and kind of remember what they did. It's a nice sort of log of the all the events that you completed and took part in. Matt says, wow, this is my first Feedback Friday in like 10 years in feedback time, eh? I haven't aged much, eh? Well, it feels like I have, but thank you, Matt. Trevor, yep, don't need anything for a quick start, quick reward, get things rolling. Teaser of the event strength for new players. Yeah, fair enough. Naya, oh yeah, otherwise we'll never remember when we could claim the lantern straight. Oh yeah, it kind of, you'll be able to look back historically. Eh? It's almost like keeping a journal of your hunting accomplishments. Seemed fairly unanimous in the chat. The sentiment I'm getting is there's a lot of good feelings around that adventure, even if it's very simplified. And apparently I'm dropping some frames, so hopefully the stream's doing okay. Maybe my internet's struggling a little bit today. Either that or my computer is in dire need of a reboot, one or the other. Jason says the adventure book is great for returning players who aren't as familiar with the event. Yeah, fair enough. But when I think about introducing a player to how the event works, when there's not too many steps, like above, you can see basically the proof of concept is get some dumpling cheese, claim the lantern, and light some candles. But I guess it gives you a little bit of context. By the time you do that, you'll understand where do I get candles and what do they do. Hopefully, so. But we've been here. If we go down, hopefully this works. Hey, it works. Awesome. But you can even just, quick little demo here. You can see now when you show up, there's no more lunar mice. Like I have literally done nothing in the event so far. And the very first thing I see is, hey, I can just go ahead. I can claim the lantern right away. And so now I have the lantern. I can use it. I'm in a stockpile location. I can start using some dumpling cheese to get some candles. And you can light them right away and start going up. And I says, can we get some milestones like the one where you claim at Nyang Gouda? Yeah, potentially. It's a little tricky to kind of figure out a good spot there. The nice thing about the reward track is it's kind of go as high as you can. And so the expectation, even at the very top, there's some nice to have stuff. But it's sort of expected that hunters won't make it all the way to the top. Not everyone's expected to be able to do that. So it's kind of tricky to pick a spot on the track that feels like an okay goal without being too above and beyond. Even, originally we were going to have it endless, but I kind of felt maybe a little better to put some sort of cap on it. But in some ways we were surprised that so many hunters can make it all the way to the top. Nick and Ryan says the stream looks okay. All right, thank you for letting me know. Man, my computer was just chugging for a second there. I think I dropped some frames for a minute. Subra says, would it be possible to have some of the old Lunar New Year skins be purchasable from the Trapsmith? Current marketplace prices for the horse and the monkey skins are sky high. All right, good to jot down as well. I'll make a little note. The intention is to have them all obtainable in some way. But often that is kind of the case, right? Some are more than others because you obtain them in different ways. Some are more scarce, some are more abundant. So there's definitely some variety. That's part of, if you want to try to get them all, there's going to be some that are a doozy and some that are really easy and everywhere in between. So Jonathan loves the adventure book. Glad to hear it. Jonathan says, will the costumed mice still come in order if you're farming candles? I don't believe so. I think that's all been cut out. So it'll just kind of work like any other area. It's just kind of an encounter pool of mice. Maybe a Neon Gouda or a red candle somewhere in the adventure to spice it up, so players need to reach a certain height to claim the adventure after claiming them, eh? Yeah, potentially. Right now we have it light at 10 candles, right? So it's pretty quick. I'd say most people could probably do that in a day, collect a little bit of cheese, collect 10 candles, and then light the 10 candles. You probably could complete that in 50 or 60 hunts rather comfortably for the most part. Free Schmidt says, so the lunar mice are still for farming candles, but you don't have to do them for the adventure. That is correct. So you can see that is the entirety of the adventure above me, at least at the moment. And it seems like there's still good sentiment to keep an adventure, even if it's rather simple. So yeah, everything else works as you'd expect. Basically, it's as though the event starts at the point in which you can claim the lantern in years past. So all the event mice are still there, like the calligraphy mouse, the red envelope mouse, the candle painter, all that, and they exist so you can collect candles from them. You do need still to go to stockpile locations though, so that they don't get in the way of some of the more fancy mechanic areas of the game. John says, is there actually any point in hunting the costume mice at all now, other than to crown them? And that's where you get candles from as well. So if you don't have any candles, you do need to hunt the event mice, are the only mice that drop cheese and candles. Or candles, not cheese. You get cheese from the regular mouse in the area. Hey, Scrib. Hey, Dave. Good to see news about the lantern. It seemed like it would be a popular change, and so far so good. Even as we kind of play it on the team, do a little internal run through, it's felt a lot better not to have to kind of jump through that hoop. You get right to the fun and the interesting parts. So. Brian says, so after the initial 12 original costume mice, what are the next 12 themed after? Well, we're not adding a new mouse this year, so the costume tiger mouse is getting an updated look. But yeah, we ultimately decided to not continue to add new mice to the Lunar New Year event and kind of put all that effort and energy into maybe more permanent areas in the game and adventures. So you still need to hunt the costume mice, says Eli. Yes, if you don't have candles, that's where you get candles from, just like in years past. But you do not need to hunt them in order to be able to claim the lantern. You can do it right away. Scrib asks, do we get the lantern with our first Zodiac mouse catch then? No, you get to claim it right from the HUD. And unfortunately, I've already done it. I could maybe register a new account, but basically when you show up, that area on the HUD, let's see if it's still here, yeah. This area on the HUD where the event progress, you can see it on the camp section there. Similarly on mobile, there's a banner at the bottom. You tap it and it loads a section where you can see the Lunar New Year event. There's just a big old button that says claim your lantern, and that's basically your initiation to say, yes, I'm ready to begin. So you just basically have to wait for the event to start, click a button, and off to the races you go. Says you think there should be some Zodiac Jade traps to restart the Jade cycle again. Perhaps. We haven't finished the set of bases yet, though. We did not do a Jade base for the very first Lunar New Year event, so there will be a Jade Tiger base, because one does not exist. You'll be able to claim that. Right now, it's the adventure reward, but I think it'll probably stay that way if we keep an adventure. John asks, do we still obtain 50 luck during Lunar New Year? Yes, you do. So yeah, as long as your lantern is lit, you get that luck bonus based on how high you've raised your lantern. No changes there. Jonathan asks, rabbit and tiger jade bases do not exist, so I assume one of those is for this year or next year. Yes, exactly. So it'll become a more pertinent conversation, I guess, after next year, if that's when we complete the base set and kind of have to reimagine things a little bit. If I recall correctly, a huge disclaimer, huge grain of salt, I might be wrong, I'm doing this from memory, but I believe we're adding a new collectible because we've completed the mask set. So we're starting a new pattern there, and I'm getting more confident in that by the second because I can even remember what the collectible is now. So unless that was a dream, maybe I had some sort of dream, but I'm pretty sure there's a new collectible making its way into find as well. Aaron says, love the streamline. Heard this event can give double loot. Is that accurate? Absolutely. I feel like that's the fun and interesting part of the event is you can double or triple loot drops while your lantern is lit. So you can hunt event mice using dumpling cheese. And the dumpling cheese you can collect and stockpile from the regular mice in those locations. They drop candles, and when you light one of those candles, it raises up your lantern. The higher your lantern goes, the more luck you have while your lantern's lit. And while you burn candles, you get either double or triple loot drops, depending if you burn a white or a red candle. Frank says, really wish there's a base you could craft that included all previous year's Jade bases. That's a decision for next year, probably. But seeing as they're all limited edition, we'd probably maybe need to check even how many people have them all, because it wouldn't be too many. Yeah, free Schmidt candles do double loot, and I think red candles triple loot, if you remember correct. You are correct. There are a few notable exceptions. You can open up the more info section here. When the event starts, it'll say the few items that it will not duplicate, such as dumpling cheese, the candles itself, map pieces, and they need 2 of those. The gold and points from a mouse. Kind of rule of thumb, you have to look for things that say additionally, or the mouse also dropped the following loot. Things that appear within this section. For the most part, the candles will affect that. Anything that's a bonus journal entry is not affected. So say there's a charm, and when you use the charm, you get a bonus item, but it's not added. It doesn't add a loot drop to the mouse. It puts it right in your inventory and gives you a special journal entry. The lantern doesn't affect that sort of thing. Well, candles now gotta be tradable. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember what's tradable and what's not. I don't believe the candles are. Yeah. And I don't believe the cheeses. But the kits that contain them are, and there will be some new kits, and there'll be some smaller kits as well. So that's kind of some feedback we're collecting last year while we were putting together the Lunar New Year event. So there'll be some smaller size kits as well. So you have to, the kits on the marketplace, those are sort of the tradable item, but once you open the kit, then the cheese and the candles are yours after that. Roxanne says, you floated an idea to Jacob last year about making the bases come back, since every 12 years is pretty limited, maybe with a bonus effect. At least for now, limited edition means they never come back. All those bases are limited edition, so unless there was some monolithic decision made to reverse that, but at least in the immediate future, there's no plans to change what limited edition means. All those bases will never return, at least fitting with the current definition of limited edition. Scrib, did you finish the red letter gifts for this one, or was that scrapped? We kind of did a little bit more exploration on that, little proof of concepts and playtesting. Ultimately decided not to have any sort of activatable or consumable item or try to tie in an aura or anything. It kind of felt, maybe it was just getting too far away from the identity of the event. Maybe we put that creative energy to a different event or a different area or something where that reward structure will shine a little bit more. I mean, Lunar New Year in some ways, you only need so much frosting on the cake, or sometimes when you try to add more and more and more, it just becomes less special. Or over the years, it just gets harder if you kind of keep going along the road of trying to one-up last year. I mean, eventually things just get completely obscene and out of control. So double, triple loot drops is already just so great, so unique, has such a strong identity. Ultimately, that's kind of where the team landed on, was just, we'll stick to that being the main identity event, celebrate that for as special as it is, and any other great ideas, probably better to fit into another event or another area, another reward structure. Often we're struggling a little bit sometimes when it comes to fitting in reward structures in different spots. So sometimes it's nice to have good ideas in the idea bank. Matt asks, will the floating islands have a stockpile area? Yep, absolutely. Floating islands here, you can travel. In this more info section, we'll show you all of the stockpile locations. So you can see Town and Anya, the laboratory, Great Gnarl Tree Dojo, Huntington, Clawshot City, Murray Market, the Narnia Rift Fungal Cavern, Machu Picchu, Queso River, and the floating islands are the stockpile locations. Schmidt says, so like Richie Rich's mouse, Richard the Rich's floating island treasure chest, you'll get extra with candles. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's a good distinction to make right there. So Richard the Rich drops treasure troves, and that is directly dropped by the mouse. So the candles can double and triple the treasure troves. When you fully explore an island, you get a treasure trove added directly to your inventory within a special journal entry. Those are not affected by candles because you don't obtain it as a loot drop from a mouse. So that's actually a pretty good example of kind of what the candles affect and what they don't, generally speaking. Caleb says, change them to mostly limited edition. That's maybe a topic for another day, but at least as it has been for many years and is still, when something's labeled limited edition, when it goes away, it doesn't come back. So when you even think about that in terms of on an item-to-item basis, that would be more of a conversation to overhaul that entirely. Jonathan says, just wondering how heavy did you guys get your golems? Yours are up to 12, 12, 11. I think I was something similar. I think I got to 13, 12, 12, or 13, 12, 11, somewhere around there. I think my highest level was 13. Scrib, could you maybe have the red letters drop like the Christmas gifts and just have them some luck-related charms gold drop during the event? Maybe since there's already plenty of auras. Yeah, potentially. But, again, like we kind of, we went through it as a team, and I think we just landed on the double, and the triple loot is already so special. It is a short and sweet event as well. The event is 2 weeks. Actually, this year it'll be 1 day longer. I think it's going to end on a Tuesday and start on a Monday. So it'll be 2 weeks and 1 day long. So with it being short and sweet, thought we'll save that creative energy for somewhere else. And go, when will the Lunar New Year purchases be released? Well, everything will be released on January 31. That's when the event starts. Eli, last year the stockpile on the floating islands was just the launch pad as an FYI. That is correct. It only on the launch pad. Otherwise, some of the way the island exploration gets a little bit odd. So it's kind of tough to tie that stuff into all facets of the area. But seeing as the floating islands is such a popular area, so many people hunting there, we did the best we could there by making the launch pad the stockpile location. And you'll see too, when you get there, that tooltip, which is probably a little bit hard to read on the screen, but it does say only the launch pad is a stockpile location. So there's a little bit of a heads up when you travel there. Brian says, Val Mice as bonus catches this year again, with Valentine maps and skins again. I'm a little on the spot here. I believe they not overlap. Hold on. You're getting into calendar territory, Brian, and I am notoriously bad. I gotta look at a calendar here. So 31. Yeah, there will be overlap. Yeah, you can expect a very similar kind of Valentine format. Will all the masks be available, or do we have to wait 12 years for the one we missed? If I recall correctly, they all are snuck in there in some way, shape, or form. So some of them, I think, were gift items. Again, don't quote me on this. I can check here, actually, as I'm... Ooh, and gifting's not working. Fantastic. All right, gifting's disabled in this spot, so I can't even check here. So it ends on... IGN's asking, eh? Let me double check. I won't even read it out loud in case I'm wrong. Lunar New Year 2022 event ends. It's February 15. That is correct. So I'm going to look and read directly from a calendar because I'm notoriously bad at giving the wrong dates. I got to write it down, read it, and then have somebody else read it usually. Might be an okay transition here into kind of another update wanted to give as well, and just kind of maybe start a few conversations, see what overall sentiment here is as well. So probably for a couple months now, behind the scenes, we've been working on an update to shops. I think we touched on this during last Feedback Friday before the holidays there. And we spoke about how it's going to affect trap progression. We're changing not so much the order, but the progression of how you earn different trap upgrades, especially in the early into the mid game, not so much end game. How much traps cost. A lot of them are just way too expensive for that title. And it was just, you would be well completed all the adventures and you still cannot afford to buy a trap. So just kind of going through it again with a different lens, like how we would sort of pace things now, that we kind of have 14 years of experience under our belt there. And that's led to a lot of changing around too of how traps are obtained, not just in their cost, but how they're created. So a lot of the crafted traps, generally moving them into trapsmiths as we sort of phase out crafting more and more as the years have gone by. And some of those traps that you craft are being moved into trapsmiths. And similarly, that's kind of tidying up a lot of the shops, adding more things to the shops. So you don't have to remember, where do I go to buy ionized salt? If you're in an area and ionized salt is used there, or you're in an area that's kind of reached the point of ionized salt being a thing, it's pretty well in every single general store. That's the goal with part of this update. That did raise a question. We've been calling those sort of grocery store items, if you will, the salt, curds and whey, Living shards to a degree, I guess, and anything that you buy from the shop, and they just basically exist as a means of making something cost gold. And some of those are available in the marketplace, and that was done a number of years ago. And maybe it's convenient. I don't know if you're in the Acolyte realm. I could maybe see a use case there where you might buy some ionized salt. But the Acolyte realm's getting a general store, and so knowing like, hey, we're stocking every area is going to have a general store. Do those items even need to be on the marketplace? Can anybody even think of a very good, valid, or compelling reason why those need to be on the market, or is it just kind of clutter? Basically, it's a trap. If you ever buy or sell them there, and I don't think it would serve too much purpose. So it says, yeah, who actually buys salt curds and whey from the marketplace? Exactly. Outside of, I think the only time I've ever done it is when I was in the Acolyte realm and I ate some ionized salt and I didn't want to leave and come back. Zed's Tower in days or in the past maybe would have been affected in a similar manner, but that's even been overhauled. And like I said, the point or one of the goals of this update is to put a shop in every single area. So you don't really need to remember, where do I go to buy splintered wood? If you're somewhere where it's useful, it's there. You know, where do I go to buy salt? Don't worry about it. There's a general store where you are. There's much more interesting things to keep tabs on in your memory banks while you're figuring out how and where you want to hunt than the trivial knowledge now, especially as the game grows with so many locations, so many items, so many shops. It's just cognitive load for absolutely no reason to have to remember and memorize where all the shops are. Jonathan, prefer crafting too. Some items should not be available in all shops. Maybe elaborate, kind of let us know why. I know there's a lot of nostalgia tied to it for sure, and I'm kind of guilty of that as well. But just even seeing it now as it gets pulled together and we're being able to play it when I start on a fresh account, it just feels better. I can see all the traps. I don't have to remember. I don't have to load the wiki to remember. What's my next trap upgrade? There's a spot where I can see it. I go to an area, I load the trapsmith, I can see my trap and several other relevant traps, and I see where I am in that hierarchy, especially with bases. I'm kind of adding the aqua base to more trapsmith, adding the bamboozler base to more areas as well. And just, when you don't have all that knowledge of the game, it just gets so much easier to unfold. Even myself, going through playing the game again, I got to the point where I was going to make the SS Huntington. I've been playing the game for 14 years. I did a lot to create the game, and I could not remember where the heck to go get some bolts of cloth and stuff. And so you can just even imagine the challenge that somebody brand new to the game that doesn't have anyone to help them, just how lost they are. And we see that. Basically, we see that when we look at, well, where do players get lost? Where do they stop playing? And it's often when they hit those barriers of like, well, I need a strategy guide. I need to read a wiki, and I need to study to figure this out. So Game says, if you can buy ionized salt in the Acolyte realm to craft runic cheese, no more reason to have those items in the marketplace anymore. That was the only, compelling reason of old that I could think of. John says, don't remove crafting shop purchases. They're just not as fun. Yeah, I hear you. It won't be removed entirely, but there's just some areas where it's just so much easier to understand. Gosh, are you guys going to ban Autobotters? We do kind of have a system in place for that, yeah. Scrib, that's an awesome idea. Call it the Nanian Supermarket. Joshua says, will some mystery crafting recipes remain like Molten Shrapnel or the Dragon Slayer cannon? The Dragon Slayer cannon, yes. The Molten Shrapnel base, no. And actually, when we see new players come in, nobody makes the Molten Shrapnel base because they can't figure out how to do it. So that's being added to Trapsmith as well. But certain things like the Dragon Slayer cannon, it is played, it's kind of embedded into the identity of that trap, and it exists in the Trapsmith. There's a breadcrumb. There's something to let you know there's a mystery to solve there. Whereas the Molten Shrapnel base is kind of an outdated way of kind of when there was a lot less content in the game and less interesting things to do. The goal of making something interesting was just kind of make it mysterious and confusing by design. And just now, as we see that just doesn't play out anymore when there's so much other stuff going on and other people have moved on and they're all doing something else. New players, as they come up, they don't even know these things exist. And so they just kind of get lost, they quit, and that's definitely not good for the game. So that's usually a good sign that something isn't fun. It should be complex, but not complicated, is usually what we is usually what you aim for in a game. Complexity is good, but complicated is not good. And I think the molten shrapnel base kind of falls under more complicated than it is complex. One rule of thumb we've been using for crafting versus shop purchase with new areas as we add them is, if it is an item that you really only use in like one area or a set of areas, or its identity is very tightly tied to a specific adventure area, it goes in the shop, because it's very easy to remember that you get cloud cheesecake from the floating islands because it's the only place you use it. Crafting is for more generic things that you might use anywhere. So if you're just going to craft like a charm that has power and you can use it anywhere, it doesn't have a special effect, it's not meant to be used in a specific area, crafting's a great fit for that, because you need to be able to kind of do it while you're on the go. Even kind of as we've iterated on crafting, you can even see like the recipe book has become a thing where it's basically it's the shop, and it's there's very similar things. Even the recipe book just starts to become a shops interface that you can use everywhere. So I just kind of, as we've been demoing it over the years and shifting to new areas using a different thing, and now we've had enough time to see, okay, areas that we built years ago in this way, how do somebody brand new, when it's not the focal point, where you're not on Discord, a Facebook group, and not everyone's reading and all doing the same thing at the same time, where does somebody kind of naturally graduating through the game, and when they get to that, we see they make it a lot further now when they get to the areas that incorporate shops. So it's been a pretty strong signal for us to see that the shops are kind of the way to go there, at least for very important things to see. One kind of uncertainty we've been having, it'd be interesting to kind of see what sentiment is like as well. Some of these things that are being transitioned into the Trapsmith, if I can use maybe the Oasis water node as an example, they have blueprints in the shop. And so currently you go and you buy the Oasis water node blueprints from the Fiery Warpath general store, and then you study the blueprints and you try to figure out how to craft it, or more likely you Google how to craft it, because the game doesn't help you figure that out. And you go to your crafting table and you go and you buy some random coconut milk and you buy some living shards from another shop. You got to remember where to go and buy those, and you go to your crafting table and you make the trap. Well, now the trap's in the Trapsmith, so you can just see the stats, which even helps you decide, do I even want this trap? What are the stats? What's my current hydro trap versus what's this one? Now you can go to the Trapsmith and you can buy it, but now the blueprint really serves no purpose anymore. It only existed basically to cost gold. Whereas via a shop purchase, you can already spend gold through a shop purchase. So right now, as we're kind of playtesting this update, the blueprint has been removed from the Fiery Warpath general store, but the crafting recipe has been left behind. I was kind of grandfathering it. So if somebody happened to own the blueprint, if they're in the middle of crafting it, they still have a means in which to finish what they started. But we're kind of, looking at overall, how do we approach that as things shift and change over time? Ideally, it'd be good if somebody who signs up tomorrow kind of exists within the same reality as somebody who signed up 10 years ago, type thing. It'd be kind of odd if they have a different sort of experience, at least in terms of like the storyline of the games or the rules, the universe the game exists in. So the thing is, not everyone who plays the game wants to read the wiki. Absolutely. I mean, there's some elements, a lot of RPG style games, anything with this much kind of depth and just sheer scope of items and scale often needs a kind of a companion, and it almost feels like you're using a tool to kind of help yourself out. But ideally, those important things that you need to be able to understand, like the adventure book. There was a lot of resistance to the adventure book at the start, thinking that it took away from some of the discovery. And ultimately, we just saw it made such a massive impact to help people figure out what there is to do, what they haven't done yet, and where they are overall. So, sometimes it's a little bit tricky. You have to rip the Band-Aid off, though, and kind of know it's time for a change, or it's time to revise things, as long as we kind of put some adequate thought into that. Roxanne says, I think it'd be best if the blueprints literally list the recipe on them. Could also list the trap stats on the blueprint, like Fulmina's Tooth. Yeah, that's been the intermediate steps we've been taking, but at that point, then it's just the tedium of having to use the crafting table. And even then having to remember, when you need coconut milk to make that Oasis water node, where do I get coconut milk? Because even myself, I was kind of playing through it and trying to do it from memory without using any secondary tools, any help. We're not using Wiki, strategy guide, or anything. And I got stuck. I could not progress in the game any further. I had to get to the point where I guess I'm going to randomly check every shop in the game to try to figure out where do I get this random crafting item. And even gets worse when it's a loot drop. So we're looking to add some feedback signals there as well. So when you see an item, that's another strength to it being in the Trapsmith. When I go and I view an item in the Trapsmith and it costs something, I can tap it and I can load up Larry's loot lexicon, and we kind of have a feedback mechanism that we can maybe leverage there of help give a little bit of a hint or a guide depending on the nature of the item. Where do I go to complete this objective? Kind of at least where do I start? Is there at least the start of a breadcrumb trail somewhere? Yeah, Matt is finding the toxic spill one of the toughest for figuring out crafting. Yeah, absolutely. Again, testament. Sitting down, Jake and I were sitting down to go through a lot of this stuff when we got to the toxic spill, and we started to get extra confused. So that's another area where a lot of the crafting has been moving into shops. A lot of the items that get dropped and you discover them via the shop. Doing a large audit of all the item descriptions, even kind of rethinking what you see when you click an item and the Larry's Loot Lexicon loads up to kind of give a little bit better of an idea of, where do I go? A sense of direction, more feedback signals. James says, I think some crafting for one-off items and traps is just fine. I'm scrolling out of view here, but it's fun traveling around a bit, buying items from shop to make a trap. We've seen the opposite, though. The evidence is kind of showing that maybe it's not too fun. Maybe it's just kind of newer players, especially if they haven't memorized where to go get everything. Again, just seeing that there's so much content now in the game, there's much more interesting things to do than remember, which shop sells splintered wood. It's just kind of a little bit too much cognitive load. Grant says have a grandfathered watermark on the recipe, maybe a little paragraph about the timeline change. That's kind of neat to tie in the lore a little bit. Right now we are kind of exploring having different status on recipes. So there's kind of active, inactive, retired, something like that. And then we can use that when we're showing recipes. So for example, if the Oasis water node blueprints, if they're gone from the general store, that means, if somebody who starts tomorrow, it will be impossible for them to craft the trap. They have to do it through the Trapsmith. But then they'll forever see a locked recipe. That just won't make any sense. So we can use flags like that to hide a locked recipe if it's been retired. So kind of different tools we're kind of exploring to see what options we have available to us. Yeah, Roxanne, you think from a player's perspective, crafting feels very distinct. There's satisfaction from putting together the parts all yourself. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Aaron, even if they're in the shop, you still have to get all the area loot to get it off the shop. That's kind of what it comes down to, is narrative. And I don't know if I'm set up well to do this. Let me see. Because when you think about it, when you go to your recipe book, I don't know what a good example would be. And my images are loading very slowly. If you ignore the broken images I have, hey, they're coming in slowly. This interface is extremely similar. Oh boy. Maybe we should run this on a faster server, right? That it's just so similar to this one, except you can see stats, and you can see it without having discovered it in some way. So, it comes down to when you first show up, even we've seen the very first thing people do when they unlock a new area is they go to the shops and they see what all the rewards are. Like, what can I get out of this area? Whereas in crafting, that's all kind of hidden and tucked away. There's no feedback signal. If all these traps were crafted, you'd have to Google, floating island traps or something like that. And so, we could leverage the recipe book, but I think we would end up basically duplicating this interface within a different narrative set. And so I think there's strengths and weaknesses to both, different things we can maybe leverage in slightly different ways. Ryan asks, if blueprints become an item cost for the Trapsmith as a workaround, how about modifying the blueprint recipe to say something about the Trapsmith's need to actually build and sell you the trap? Some of those have remained behind, especially blueprints that are a loot drop. So unless I'm mistaken, let's say the Onyx Mallet blueprints are dropped. in the Pinnacle Chamber and in other spots. I think the Assassin might drop them as well, but I'm doing that from memory. That has remained because it's a loot drop. It's like a progression item. It's, you know, you have to go and you have to find that. Whereas there are lots of, like, let's say, I think the dehydration base is an example of this. You know, I'll go to the harbor to double check. We're traveling at a molasses speed here. I've journeyed to the harbor. It felt like a journey. It felt like one. So the dehydration base blueprints cost just over 22,000 gold. And then you're going to have to buy a little bit of salt to make the base as well. So, you know, something like that, it just kind of adds complexity but no depth. That's often kind of a goal when you create rules, things that you need to do, it creates complexity. And when you do that, you want to create depth where your decisions can have different outcomes that you can learn something from is what depth is. But this just means, okay, to get the base, I have to do 3 shop purchases instead of 1. And how I go about it, you know, different players can't go about it in different interesting ways. So there's complexity, but there's no depth. So usually that's a pretty good signal that it can be simplified and you can achieve the exact same result. Nicholas says, why not use Trapsmith for traps and crafting for charms then? Like I mentioned earlier, kind of rule of thumb we've been using is things that you use throughout the game. So if it's a charm that just has stats, you know, you can use it anywhere, then we'll lean toward crafting so that you can do it anywhere. You can make it on the go. Whereas it's something that's very tightly coupled to a specific adventure area, theme, something like that. Then it goes in the shops because then it's kind of no longer requires additional memory storage in your brain there to remember where do I go for what. Thomas says the answer is obviously to dedicate your life to MouseHunt, then it's not a problem. Well, I think there's a natural progression to that. As you play longer and longer, obviously become more familiar with things, right? Your familiarity grows and things start to become second nature and they become obvious and easy to remember. And I think as the years have gone by, 14 years of MouseHunt, a lot of areas upon their release were kind of designed through that lens, meant for somebody who has memorized all there is to do, which is all well and good to start. But as it ages, as it gets to be 10 years old, it doesn't work anymore for somebody who's coming into that area and they're not familiar with the game. You know, often an area comes out, even look right now, the highest level area is Archduke. We have hunters that are way beyond Archduke. Players typically finish content faster than it comes out. Whereas when if you start the game tomorrow, the content is going to keep on going and going and going. And you're not going to experience it at the same pace where you finish all there is to do and then you just have lots of time to hang out, set your own goals, and just let your familiarity grow and grow and grow, and let it kind of everything becomes second nature there. And so I think that contributes to those feelings of being overwhelmed and lost a sense of direction, that we just kind of see it's just very hard to get people past certain parts of the game because it's not familiar to them, and there's no feedback to help them build that familiarity as they get kind of later and later stages of the game. So again, just kind of comes down to pacing. I think there'll still be room for those large undertakings, those kind of big things that have lots of complexity to them and figuring out lots of nuance. But it's about pacing them in a way where when you get to that, you're ready to take on that challenge. Whereas in years past, even releasing Froma was meant to be like, whoa, this is the biggest thing, and people have been playing the game for years and they're ready to sink their teeth into Froma. Now when somebody gets to Froma, they've been playing for months and they're not ready for that similar sort of scale and depth of complexity. So just kind of find a way to kind of better smooth it out and have it designed for the player who experiences it, rather than kind of through the lens of years past, everything was designed for the sort of extremely experienced endgame player. Scrib asked, what was the hydration base's purpose? And was it for radioactive cheese, ancient, and forks? No, there was definitely a period where we just added things for the sake of adding them. And so, as you'd expect after doing anything for 14 years, I would hope you get better at your craft. So and it's perfectly natural. You look back on things that you did over 10 years ago, like I would do it differently now. And so I think a lot of the team feels the same way there, as we just gain experience and we get better at kind of learning, okay, what works well, what works not so well, especially what works well to start, and then what starts to show its age down the road, so we know what kind of pitfalls to avoid falling for. So the dehydration base really was just adding it for the sake of adding it. There were a lot of traps. There was a time in MouseHunt's history where that was a content release, just releasing one new trap. Never mind an area, mice, rewards, and all that stuff. Adventure, a storyline, a narrative to explore. It was this month's update. We've added the Mouse Rocket team. There you go. That's that's the update this month. Enjoy, right? And that was kind of the scale of content we had to deliver. But as the game has grown and we've been able to kind of add more polish to things and think around bigger ideas, we kind of add more sort of episodic content all at once, or a whole event kind of comes at once. Whereas before, even an event would be, the burglar mouse. You can encounter the burglar mouse 5% more for this week. Enjoy. That's the event. That's where maybe not so much the glitch paw, but even the original Valentine mouse, the hollow head mouse, the original Halloween event was just, the hollow head mouse is just in the encounter pool, and enjoy. So that was the scope of a Halloween event, 12, 13 years ago. So dehydration base, to cycle all the way back as I just ramble on, was similar scope. Like, here you go, dehydration base, new base, and it's just crafted for the sake of crafting it. Sally says, I quit for 2 years when the Tribal Isles came out because it was too complex. That is kind of the quintessential example of something that was made to be, okay, we think the game's over at Dragon. It was meant to be the final challenge of the game. And so it's complex for the sake of complex. But now that it's borderline early game, maybe the start of the mid game, we see similar things, especially without HUDs. When we think about all those early game areas, they don't even have heads-up displays to kind of help give you feedback, guide you through, even keep track of, do a basic inventory, resource management. So lots of work to go in through some of those older areas. Yeah, Brian, in recent years, the crafting item limit for our higher rank cheese seems obsolete. The last time that required that many items was you could do it from the HUD. Yeah, the Ascended Elders cheese there. For sure, it's just kind of a design shift, right? As we kind of had crafting, and then we had shops, and we had shops and crafting. And as we kind of kept an eye on how both of those do in terms of when somebody new starts, what's more approachable and what seems more fun, so that they complete the area and they go on and they continue to play and continue to have fun. The shops has been winning that battle. So it's just, a shift in design philosophy. We do less crafting and more things in the shop, and we leverage crafting more for narrative, thematic kind of things when we want you to feel like you've assembled it yourself. Jonathan says, I'd rather spend my time hunting with the best available traps, not hunting for the best available traps. That's an interesting way of putting it as well. Yeah, it's mouse hunt, not trap hunt. Mitz, I'm late again. Good day, Dave. Well, welcome. Better late than never. A simpler, faster, earlier game would be welcome to help new players catch up to newer content, says James. Yeah, absolutely. That's a goal of ours as well. It's a balance to strike as well. You don't want to diminish existing accomplishment, but you also want it to be reasonable. If you have a friend and you're like, hey, come play this game with me, that's a huge part of the fun of games is playing with others. When you think, if you sit down and you're going to play euchre and you just pull out a deck of cards and you're all by yourself and you sit at a table, you're probably not going to have as good of a time if you find 3 people to go play euchre with. And, all games, there's so much fun is when you play with others. So if you have a friend that, come try MouseHunt, I'm having so much fun playing, and they start playing it, and you're like, all right, just, in 3 years, we can be in the floating islands together, and you can bring me on hunts, and you're like, wait, hold on, it's been 3 years. So we try to, address that as best we can as the game grows, to just kind of compress things, tighten them up, add better feedback signals there. And I think through the years, we've gotten better at, when we release new content, not always thinking. There was a time, the Tribal Isles was a good example, where we thought, okay, this is like the last thing in the game. The game's not going to keep going for too much longer. No, now we kind of design and decide, well, this will go forever. The game will go, if it goes for 500 years, will this adventure still make sense in the grand scheme of things? And it's just, it causes slightly different decisions to be made in terms of how you go about things, how you pace things out, and kind of how you structure them. 50-minute mark already. I could tell because my lungs are starting to run out of steam. Osh says, why is there no new rank after Fabled? Well, maybe to give us a little bit of time to catch up to players. So at the moment, that's the level cap. Aaron says it was a slog and took effort to push through Fort Rocks and Claw Shop, but once you're in Duke, you liked it again. And there's definitely a shift there. Probably somewhere around Duke. I feel like things kind of start to, maybe that was the start of when we started to make slightly different decisions. Maybe sometime shortly after the Labyrinth, I'd say. Sally says, well, you need better traps to use in Travel Isle so you don't get so many red boxes. That's part of the shop's update as well. So even the last Feedback Friday, we touched on adjusting a lot of the traps, trying to make some that were designed in the past as stretch goals, but then nothing kind of came along to supersede that. So Onyx Mallet comes to mind. Like it's a disproportionate amount of effort and cost goes into making the Onyx Mallet, whereas by the time you obtain it, you're like, no, you kind of wasted your time. Like you would spend forever to make it. You'd be better off just kind of skipping it, doing the next trap. So lowering the cost of that, fewer Onyx stones, making the blueprints more accessible, buffing the stats. I think that trap's getting a stat buff. The overall gold cost, the cost of creating it coming down. So it's a more viable option, a viable choice to make to upgrade and maybe let that help you endure dunes. And so there's been a lot of kind of tweaking in the hierarchy of trap progression, and that's part of the goal as well. As we move some of these traps out of crafting into the shops, a new player doesn't even realize the Onyx Mallet exists. So by placing it in the shop, you can sort of see, well, this is like a canonical upgrade within the game. It's there to discover. You can see, okay, it costs Onyx stones. I'm going to click Onyx stones and see where I get those. Oh, I need to discover a blueprint. Okay, I'm going to click the blueprint and I'm going to go see where to get that. And so there's been lots of little spots like that where we've changed the stats and the cost of traps to hopefully reduce red boxes. Actually, Dur comes to mind as well. I think it was last Feedback Friday. Maybe I should have saved the slide from last Feedback Friday here. The Dur tribe is getting the same weakness to physical as Elub has to hydro and Nurg has to tactical. So that'll go a long way as well, just to make physical traps very effective against Dur mice. Swift says Slack 2 grind was the worst. That is one that is getting extremely shorter. I think it's 500 Fool's Gold right now. Grain of salt, I might be misquoting here. I believe we have it down to 50 Fool's Gold now. So it is 10 times easier to acquire the Slack 2, unless I am sorely mistaken. I don't have a quick and easy way to cross-reference that. Similarly, the traps you earn from the train, a little bit of an outdated reward structure. I think maybe some of the original design intentions of the train were to be kind of a place for competitive players to camp out and just kind of compete in these train tournaments. That obviously did not hold up now. Fewer than 0.5% of players in the last year have even interacted with the train area. So those traps, just bringing the costs way, way, way down, and then giving them a little bit of a stat boost as well. So they're getting a little bit of a buff to at least try to make them a little bit more of a viable choice you could make as an intermediate step between, say, the Slack 2 and the Judge Droid chap. So that's another example of kind of the shops update, kind of adding more stock to shops, adding more, kind of doing away with some of the blueprints, putting more things in the Trapsmith, helping newer players discover those upgrades, and then kind of making everything more accessible and kind of giving it a better spot so that you don't need to grind the train for 3 months to get the traps, and then by then you're way higher than Lord Lady rank. You're well past the train. It's like, well, I don't even want these. These took so long, I don't even want them anymore. The only thing they help me do is be better at trains, and nobody's doing trains. So, yeah, Mango says the train is pretty cool but empty. Yeah, definitely kind of lesson learned from that area, that it needs to, anything that requires player-to-player interaction, it needs to kind of make it a bonus, not a necessity. It kind of is, but a little better yet. Clawshot City, one of my team members said you just need to have the mouse on the map to get the adventure, and she caught it, and then 37 maps later, she finally got the last mouse for the adventure. Yeah, maybe some pacing needs to be changed there as well. I would have just made Fool's Gold easier to get. Well, other things cost fool's gold, so that's a little bit of a harder change when our objective was, okay, the Slack 2 really should not be weeks and weeks of effort. That's kind of not really intended, and it doesn't make sense as sort of a non-stretch goal, right? I think, again, kind of thinking through the original release of so many areas, I think decisions were made as though everything is going to be the epic end game, right? And we slowly shifted mentality. Well, no, everything will lead into the next thing. And so there's lots of spots in the game like that where there's just something that is just obscenely above and beyond. And so, the only goal we were looking to achieve there was the Slack 2 should be easier to obtain. And so, kind of the simplest path without having to rebalance the cost of everything that costs Fool's Gold was to make the trap cheaper rather than make Fool's Gold more accessible. So it says, I think increasing the stats of early law traps would be good. There's been a few buffs as well. I don't know if I'm logged in to see the sheet. Like I said, if you watch last week's Feedback Friday, we went over a list of all the affected equipment, or not all of it, but we tried to get as many as I could. And a lot of law traps were on that list of they're going to get a buff, or their costs are going to come down. So you don't have to hunt with them as long. You get an upgrade sooner. So just kind of the overall pacing of law is almost getting overhauled from scratch. Frank says, I was disappointed that new skins were purchase only. Used to get a rare chance for skin on maps, but we didn't have the chance this year. Yeah, fair enough. It's a tricky balance to strike for sure. I mean, some skins we're going to put in the premium shop. Some are going to be earned through in-game. But, we endeavor to have anything that is available only through a real-world cache to be available in the marketplace. So there is always that rare chance to get it, if you want to think of it in that way. If there was a 1% chance to get it from a map, by the time you do 100 maps to kind of hit the average chance of getting it, you may not get it yet to begin with as well, but you're earning gold. Every time you capture a mouse, you get gold. And so it's almost like you're getting a little piece of a trap skin every time you hunt, not just during the event, but anytime. And so just slowly but surely, all those skins become accessible in a way. And just typically, especially with events, putting skins in maps. Skins are an item that often a player only really wants one of them, for the most part. And so when putting them in maps, people passively get skins, and so they start to get doubles, triples, quadruples, and we just find the supply goes up faster than the demand for them. And then we kind of get feedback on the other end. It's like, I have the skin, but I feel like it wasn't a challenge and it's not worthwhile. I don't even want to do maps to get the skin, because when I look on the marketplace, the skin's 500 gold. Why would I do 50 maps when I can just spend 500 gold on a skin? So, we're still trying to find that right balance there between making them feel rewarding and valuable and special, but still accessible at all times as well. Aaron says, even getting 50 Fool's Gold will be a challenge, but 500 was just redonk, eh? Absolutely. And even as we were kind of playing through it, rule of thumb, if something felt too hard, we often just cut it in half. If something costs 1,000, cut it in 500. If it still feels too hard, then, odds are, yeah, it was absolutely way off base. If you cut it in half and it feels, too easy, you might even be kind of on the right track. So, but when we came to the Slack 2, even cutting it in half, we're like, no, I just want to keep cutting it in half. So it was, and just, hunting with the original Slack in Clawshot City is not particularly a fun experience. And nowadays we would pace it more where you get something that would give you an appropriate catch rate. And it's not until you try to progress that the mice get harder. So it's like, well, here's a trap. This is the best trap you can possibly have right now, and the mice are just way too strong. Instead, well, here's a trap, and the mice are appropriate level for that trap. And then if you try to move to the next area, maybe the mice are starting to get stronger than the trap you have, and so you have to kind of keep up with your upgrades rather than it being extremely punishing until you get an upgrade, if that makes sense. So more positive reinforcement over time rather than a large dose of negative reinforcement to start. We are at the hour mark. I should wrap things up before I completely lose my voice as well. And as we often do, we'll end off with trivia. Did anyone pop in? Nobody came to join me. Nobody popped in the channel to join me. Nobody wants to crash Feedback Friday. If anybody at Hit Crab is listening, feel free. You can jump in. You can give that equivalent of the knock on the door. But this week's trivia question, and it's a good old-fashioned guess a number trivia question, which surely won't result in a bunch of number spam in the chat, but it is how many crafting items are in the game. So items do have a classification, or we categorize items. How many crafting items do you think we're up to now? It's a large number. Hey, Kramer's got the Great Winter Hunt hangover. I wonder, maybe a lot of people are on their lunch break now. No, I don't think so. A lot of people are working away. Franco and Chris are working on the birthday event. Jake and Giorgio are working on that shops refresh. I think they're working on a lot of things. I might be interested to hear some of the feedback. I should have been reading the chat a lot quicker. I forget the answer to the question. I gotta look it up. All right, what is it?
Knock, knock.
Knock, knock. There we go. Let me bring you in.
I don't know how late I am based off of lag.
Welcome, Jacob.
Hello,
Lovely
everyone.
display picture. We're doing trivia. We're guessing how many crafting items are in the game.
Oh no, I came at the wrong time. There are so many.
Ice Killer with the immediate guess of 420. You're actually pretty close, even though that was probably a meme guess. It's in the 400s, and you're low, so it's higher than 420. I forget the answer again. I gotta leave it up on the screen. I can't remember numbers to say. I think because I'm reading so many numbers. $446 is too high. $432 is oh so close higher. Somebody probably said it by now, but $440 is just a little too high. Literally as close as you could be.
$439.
Jacob gets the correct answer of $439. Congratulations, Jacob.
Stole it from the players. Sweet.
Yes, the answer is indeed there are 439 crafting items in the game. Wow. That's more than a few. That's a couple more than a few, I'd say.
That's just a few, huh? I'm kind of curious. Do you think like most of those are within kind of like a certain range of content? Because I feel like in the first few years we were like more items, more crafting, you know? So like, is it the case that like most of that comes from the first like, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years?
That's a pretty good question. There's a way I could look that up. I can't remember the URL.
Yeah, it's quite the query to pop on you right now.
I
don't even know how you would check that personally, but
I was gonna bring up a browser here of all the crafting items, but because I'm not on my work machine, it's a little hard to pull up. I'm gonna set up ahead of time, but I'd imagine the Tribal Isles has a whole lot of them. Froma had quite a few. Like as we were going through that shops overhaul, there was a lot of grocery shopping to go get your paint brand paint. You know.
Don't even say that. I still am haunted by it.
Sally asks, "Why is Jacob so small?" That's just his display picture. His wonderful Discord display picture.
Tiny, beautiful face that is extremely stretched.
Yeah, Edward says the Living Garden Cycle probably has a lot. Yeah, I think you're right there as well. That contributed probably quite a few crafting items.
True.
Froma Rift has quite a few. Yeah, I would think so as well. A lot of different cheese to make. Jonathan says, thanks for the 10 ribs, but then Saul right after says, thanks for the wealth charms. I think Saul's correct. I don't know. How's your day going, though, Jacob?
Oh, pretty good. Just wrapping up some things and just kind of enjoying the stream, so I figured I'd pop in and say hi.
Awesome. Were you doing maybe some Lunar New Year map? That's my guess.
I was indeed. Yes.
Yeah, that'll be fun this year. Lunar New Year, we're dressing up the map. Did you add some lanterns? What kind of direction did you go in?
I added a few lanterns in a variety of everywhere. Might have around the same number of lanterns as there are crafting items in the game.
Okay, I see. Few is in quotes there. That's been italicized. A few. 1,000, 100.
Very, very slanted text right there.
Trevor would like to see a Jacob face airship cosmetic.
I've seen it. It's glorious. The Discord has shipped that one around.
Yeah, bro.
Unfortunately, the only way to buy it is in the Franco shop, though.
Yeah, that's hard to come by. I should put the. Did anyone put the? Oh, thank you, Brian. You're a man among men. Thank you for putting the link in the chat for the reward for everyone's clicking convenience. Let me see, make sure I don't lose Jacob doing this. I'll even rename it. Wait, I don't know my right from my left.
Are you on the trackpad?
No, I'm on my desktop machine because it tends to play a little nicer with streaming. Actually, it's audio,
Oh,
so
yeah.
exactly for this reason. Mac, it's very hard to capture your desktop audio without installing some drivers
Oh,
that,
right.
if I don't need to, I don't really want to install that. So
Yeah, that's a headache.
James asks, how many different recipes are there? That's a good question. Let's check it out.
Haha. I just like realized that I could turn on my camera.
No pressure,
Oh.
I didn't know if you're, you
That
could have
I
been in
just it didn't
pajamas with
even
your hair
occur
in
to me.
curlers.
I mean, I may only be wearing a hoodie, but you don't need to know that.
All right, let's see how many recipes there are. I think I can look that up in a relatively quick fashion. The brightness on my laptop is all the way down, though. That's going to impede. And get info. There are 310 crafting recipes. And that would even include anything that has two recipes, like a Magic Essence version. That would include both of those versions. So that's quite a few things to craft.
Just a few. Wow.
Swift asking about the new costume tiger mouse. Any references
Yes.
in there?
Oh, yeah. I was heavily inspired. Uh, yeah, I'm sure it's pretty obvious to those who've seen it, but I we were chatting about it in the art team, talking about kind of like creating Year of the Tiger stuff, and there were several moments when someone was like, "Oh, what should I do for this?" Like, would anybody have any good ideas? And I would basically always be like, "Hey, have you seen Zootopia and the dancing tigers that are just glittery?" Um, I basically, kept trying to get the other artists to reference that, and no one did. So eventually, I just had to take it upon myself and do it. So
I guess I better watch
was
Zootopia is what I'm getting out of it.
it was a fun one to draw.
Eileen, hello, welcome. Just got here. Hope you're well. Osh asks, what's after Fabled rank? Nothing yet. Brian's asking, Jacob, yeah, good question for you. Are any other event mouse redraws in the pipeline after the costume tiger? And in parentheses, he's looking at the mobster.
Ooh, yeah, that one definitely could use a redraw. I agree with that. I think that, yeah, like that's something to assess. It depends entirely on how useful that redraw could be. Obviously, prize mice are something that we can utilize, so it makes sense to tackle that one, as opposed to like adding another prize mouse, right? Makes sense to kind of like tune up that old art. Whereas like other events like Halloween, Great Winter Hunt, birthday stuff like that, there's like a huge cast of characters, and although some of those are like, yeah, I'm not as keen on that artwork, they don't play as important a role, so they're just kind of fodder. um, but yeah, I imagine like the Lunar New Year, it's kind of about that one character. So uh, for the future of those, we're going to be reskinning those characters. And I mean, it's a case of you've had them around for 12 years for each one, so giving them a fresh coat of paint doesn't feel like it's sunsetting that design too early on.
Yeah, iterative, I don't think any of us thought 14 years down the road we'd still be going. So it's, I think
Exactly.
I was It's an anecdote I share often. I think I shared it earlier. Of it's perfectly natural. You look back on something that you did over a decade ago, and you certainly hope it's like I think I can do that a little bit better now. So
Yeah.
we get it
Oh,
with code,
absolutely.
we get it with areas, designs. You get it with art and style and everything. So
Yeah, I don't think a lot of projects get to experience what we do with kind of how much we've benefited from the lessons learned, and like just the post-mortem level of stuff that's available to look back on and be like, wow, we could really do something to take that to the next level, or we've come a long way from that kind of thing. I think we really have quite a unique experience around that. And I
yeah,
feel like Lunar New Year is one of those events that really kind of always draws that back, because we kind of every year kind of have to solve a little bit of a conundrum, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, so we're going to be completing a set of this. What are we going to do next? Like we kind of always want to have something interesting to collect and capture and such. We're going to be closing up the bases soon, right? I think, what do we have, one left, or
one
I
more,
think
yeah,
we might have
next
just
year.
one left. Yeah, and then it's kind of like, well, what do we do after that, right? It's an interesting question.
Yeah. Well, so many years ago, probably didn't give it any thought. We never thought we'd complete the
Exactly.
set, but here we are. It's
Yeah, like
interesting too, like
I
unique.
know that I had a belief that we would obviously be able to kind of get beyond that, but I never, like had any plans for it, right? It's kind of like, yeah, we'll keep going, but I'm not anticipating and planning for, like when we run out of the bases, what are we going to do for that, right? But yeah, Lunar New Year for me always kind of brings back those like, uh, yeah, we've been doing this for this amount of time, to the point that we've done a full cycle of the
Yeah,
zodiac. It's pretty wild.
yeah. Even interesting challenges that come up, with anything. If you practice it for a decade, a lot of things are iterative. If you're going to make a piece of furniture, and one you made 10 years ago is like, oh, that piece of furniture doesn't turn out as well as one I make today. But we also have to maintain what we've built for
Mm-hmm.
10 years, right? And that adds
For
some
sure.
unique challenges as well as time goes on. And so, it's nice as we kind of get more bandwidth to be able to go back and just kind of, polish, tweak things a little bit and maybe help
Yeah,
bring them up to kind of 2022 standard as best we can.
it's nice to have a little bit of an excuse to do it too, right? With kind of like certain elements that repeat, it kind of gives you those opportunities to kind of like give those little tune-ups where you don't need to kind of like rebuild the whole piece of furniture. It's kind of like, oh yeah, it's a little loose, we can like tighten this up here, right?
Yeah.
So it's a nice excuse to get to do that.
Reupholster it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The cats have torn this up a little too much.
We're no strangers to
They,
speaking in
I
metaphors. Yeah.
love, good reference, the ship of Theseus. Eventually, will it even be the Lunar Year anymore once we've replaced enough of the components?
Oh, LV, thanks everyone. I'm off. Thanks for all the fun. Devs, you rock. Thank you so much. Osh, thanks for the 11 years of fun. Well, thank you for playing for 11 years. Hope you have a great day. Roxanne's floating the idea of a selector to choose between different appearances. It's in the backlog. It's in the idea
Yep,
bank.
yep,
No immediate plans to get it in there, but I agree. It kind of would be nice to
yeah,
look at the retro art of anything that's been re-illustrated.
absolutely. Yeah, we've totally talked about that. I love that concept. Especially since we are getting to the points where we're like reskinning event mice, and it's like, oh man, like there's charm to all of the old art. I just I look at it and I'm like, I don't want to like put that up as an advert of like what the game is, but you got to appreciate where you came from.
Oh yeah, lots of nostalgia
And I
tying to
mean,
things as well.
massive kudos to the players that do the wiki work. Um, you all are amazing, because that's actually one of the best places for the art team to actually use as like legacy kind of reference stuff like that. It's incredible. And for anyone who plays, like if you're interested in like looking at previous versions, that's a great place to find it.
Absolutely. No, in dev side of things, we use it as well. Even putting together the shop refresh, we're always nervous. Like, what if somebody like intentionally made something wrong here? But we're
Mm.
like cross-referencing a lot of the costs and stuff. We end up like Googling an item in MouseHunt. The wiki comes up. I'm like, okay, all right, yep, okay, no,
Yeah.
we're right. All right, yep, that's how you make it. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Exactly
It
that.
just speaks volumes too. This the spots in the game that do need some feedback. It's like, well, wait, oh, how do I get this thing? What do I make it out of again? And when you got to Google it, and it's like, well, there should be
Yep.
something in game to at least start the breadcrumb for you.
Yep. No, absolutely. Like that's the biggest kind of like personal grief of the early player experience is the fact that a lot of the time you actually need to leave the game to find how to progress it. That's just not good game design, right?
I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
natural in sort of end game, when you're really trying to go above and beyond and figure out, well, what's the best way to do something?
Yep.
It's natural. You reach out and you kind of use your network to figure that out. But when you're just going
Yeah.
through something for the first time, like you should be able to get the basics to start learning at least, get a baseline established.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine for like min-maxing, strategizing, but like to do the base experience, it's not a good look.
Yeah, question there in the chat about maybe trimming down some of the winter hunt mice because there sure are a lot of them. The decorations help to split up the
Yeah.
encounter pool, but for sure, I mean, there's just so many that each individual one becomes kind of rare, So
Yeah, the wild thing is we really limit ourselves each year to creating new characters for major repeatable events too. But it's true, the systems in place for map hunting, for like the birthday Great Winter Hunt, those have been just absolutely phenomenal for us to like not feel so hampered about adding new event mice. But yeah, there is so many, right? So eventually there is kind of like a point where it's like, how do we deal with that?
yeah.
Do we have like a new a retiree zone for old event mice that just they're like, I'm done, I'm retiring, I'm gonna go live on the farm kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, we'll need some sort of snow fort area or something, or a big ski hill. We could take all the ski themed mice and probably have some fun
Yeah,
with them
yeah.
there.
Just permanently kind of like let them set up residence out there so that people would still crown them or whatnot. But yeah, like I, a a nice thing about having a good volume of event characters is you can build gameplay around it, right? Like I really do love the maps during Great Winter Hunt and like the birthday and stuff like that. Like, uh, and I think that there is more that we'll be doing with that stuff in the future. So if there's too few, that's an issue. If there's too many, that's also an issue. It's always something to kind of like figure out.
Yeah, Alex count up to 61 Great Winter Hunt mice. That is a few. I think,
Wow.
are there more than 61 lanterns on the map you're illustrating though?
I think there
Yeah.
are, yes.
Okay. Sense of scale.
I went lantern crazy. Not gonna lie.
Martin, first feedback Friday, and I've been hunting since 2008. May 10. That's pretty well at the beginning of the game. I think we started in March. Thank you and
Yeah,
see you next time. Hey, Martin, thanks for popping by.
that's
Well,
amazing.
is it just about? I think it's just about lunchtime, and we've been
I
going.
believe it is.
We're narrowing in on an hour and a half, so I guess we'll close things off. Any other things you want to share? Anything, Jacob?
See you next week, probably.
All right.
Although
Here.
I do need to take my dog into the vet at 11, but I think
Next
Alex
Friday?
can do that. So yeah. But I think I'll be able to manage it. If I need to start a bit late, that should be okay though, because I tend to run for a while. So
Okay, good to know.
if people are cool with that, but we'll see.
In our weekly meeting, the question will have extra
Hmm.
significance Monday morning when we
Exactly.
figure out who's
Yeah,
doing
we'll
feedback
we'll, we'll
Friday.
figure it out.
Yeah. All right, so heads up, maybe, and I'll have to change the timing on that banner. Maybe we can put up a ticker as well, or something like that. Or
Yeah.
we'll figure
But
something out.
I think I can manage it. So we'll see.
All right, cool. All right, well, thank you for joining me, hunters. Jacob, thanks for popping on in, knocking on the
Absolutely.
door.
It was fun.
Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Happy hunting. Enjoy the last tail end of the Great Winter Hunt here. Make sure to send out those golems. If you have way too many parts, smash them into animated snow. Go get some jingle bells from the shop. You can bell the golems back right away to make sure you cash out as much as you can. Visit all the shops and everything. Great Winter Hunt will come to an end on Tuesday. So all the shop rewards, everything's going away. Your animated snow and your extra golem parts, they melt away in that summer heat. So you make sure you use up everything you can. The news post kind of outlines everything well also. So if you're kind of wondering what stays and what goes, make sure you reference the latest news post that Franco put up Otherwise, have a fantastic weekend, week ahead, everything. Happy hunting, everybody. We'll see you next time. See you next Friday.
Catch you later. Bye.
2.
You're a trap. Don't seem to mind it. You attract me. I'm a mouse, you're a cat. I don't seem to mind it. Soft and furry. Oh, and just when I think I'm safe, snap. Turns out I'm never safe, snap. Just when you think you're safe, snap. I come back. You don't seem to mind it, but I'm a fool. Broke my back. You don't seem to mind it, 'cause you're so cool. And just when I think I'm safe, snap. Turns out I'm never safe, snap. Ooh. And just when you think you're safe, snap. Turns out I'm